just when it took place, but Grandma Boyett and the kids were all involved with it. Bought one, two, about 125 acres.
Who did now?
Grandma Boyett.
Okay.
That's after Noah died.
Okay.
I think. I'm not sure. He might have bought
So
it.
Mattie.
Yeah.
Quit.
Man, that
He
was
might have bought it before Noah died, and of course she got it then.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
that was early 1900s.
And it wound up that each kid got 25 acres, and they divided it up.
That's
And
5.
they owed a little. They owed a little bit on it, I think, and they got it paid off or something. Anyhow, they
So there
they
was
all
5. Was there 5 kids?
yeah, there's 5 kids, and Uncle Ed, Uncle George, Uncle Arthur, Dad, and Aunt Ora. There's 5 kids.
Okay.
And Uncle Arthur didn't want his. So he sold it to Dad and Uncle Ed,
Okay.
which was, their part was on each side of his. So they just moved their line in to split his
Split
up.
it, yeah. About 12 and a half.
Yeah, about 12 and a half acres. On more or less, is
Yeah.
the way it's listed then. And the original deeds on ours for the 25 acres plus this bought from Uncle Arthur, that deed called for 37 and a half acres. But when it was surveyed out in the modern times, it wound up about 34 something acres. 11.6 each one of us kids. And I think Uncle Ed's, when it's surveyed out, I think it's surveyed out more than 37 acres, to be right truthful about it.
Right.
It's, according to terrain and all that's got a lot to do with it.
Right.
And Dad and Uncle Ed bought that on the credit. And they got LT and Porter, I don't know what their dad's name was, who was a Hobbit, loaned them the money to get that, split that up, And that depression hit. That happened in 28, 29, something like that.
29.
Depression hit.
29.
And
October 29.
it took Dad till 1941 to pay his. He owed $300.
Wow.
And it took him till 1941 to pay it off. And he went several years there. He'd raise sugar cane and make 75 to 100 gallons of syrup. And he would use that syrup to pay the interest on the place.
Right.
Paid none on, didn't have enough to pay for any interest. I mean, any principal on it. It was only interest he paid, but he kept the interest paid all along. So that way he kept it open. In 1941, I was 11 years old. He sold a bale of cotton. Then he went to Mr. Hobbart's, and I went with him. And he said, I'm going to pay it off and get that deed. And he did. He paid it off, got the deed, signed off, paid in full, all that, And he sat there holding his lap, sitting there on the porch, straight chair, leaned back against the wall. I was sitting on the steps. And they were talking. They were good friends all along,
Right.
And didn't live too far from us. And he just said, son, talking to me, if I don't have to, I ain't never planting another stalk of cotton. So he didn't. He didn't plant no more cotton. That was the last bale he sold off the place.
Paid off.
Paid it off, and that was 1941. It had to have been up in, probably up maybe as late as this in the year, or maybe a month or so early, than this, that he paid it off. And he trucked for him the rest of the time then.
And the war hit in December.
And the war hit, yeah. And of course everything began to increase a little bit. But there was one time back in the early 30s that he worked for WPA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one day.
Never heard that one.
50 cents
Wow.
he's got for that day. He said there's got to be a better job than this, because Dad believed in working for his money. And he said you go out there and they give you a shovel and you stand around and lean on the shovel handle all day and you get, it didn't do anything. So he says,
Government work program.
if I could catch one fox a week, I could make more money than I do here, and I could take care of the stuff at home. Not have to
Be away,
be away and everything, take care of the farm and everything. So he sent off to Montgomery Ward's or Sears and Roebuck, I think it was Ward's, and bought a half a dozen steel trap. And he started trapping. And possums was like 10 cents a hide. Coons maybe 50 cents. Mink was $3 or $4. Of course, he never did catch any mink, he said. But fox was $2 a hide. And he said, if I can catch one a week, that's more than I'd make on the WPA. And that's what he done that winter. He done that 2 or 3 winters.
When was that?
1940, you said?
No, in the early 30s.
No, this has been before.
Oh, 41. That's
In the
okay.
early
Yeah,
30s.
yeah.
During the Depression, the first part of it.
And he would farm, raise cotton, raise corn, and
Truck farm
cotton too back then.
and
Yeah.
And sugar cane.
On 30.
And him and Uncle Ed had a mill where they crushed the cane, got the juice out of it, and they made their own syrup and everything. And he'd make enough of syrup to, like I say, pay his interest and have enough for our own use. And his dad would make his own, he'd cook his own, and Uncle Ed'd cook his own. Of course, they worked together, kept the mill going that time, And they would go in a team with a wagon, or 2 horses pulling it, or a mule or whatever, and go in the woods and pick up pine knots to burn for cooking that syrup off. I mean, I'm talking about head off down through there in the woods. I mean, you could drive a team of horses in the wagon through the woods anywhere you was at.
Yeah, this is what he was telling me the other day about.
And in 41, I believe it was, we had a ice storm, and it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 days long, freezing, slow rain. But then it began to thaw, and it began to break the timber. And timber as big as them pines there would break off 30, 40 foot above the ground and just kind of hull out. And wrap the ground up. And you couldn't walk through the woods then. Much less drive a horse wagon through it.
And then all the underbrush has now taken over since then.
Right. It used to be clear. I mean,
Right.
Briars and underbrush.
all that stuff has grown up.
Yeah, since that, because we were talking about that, and he was talking about, how Grandpa could walk around and drive a team of horses, and I'm like, well, I don't see how you could do that, with the, and we started talking about it, and he told me about the ice storm, and it stayed like about 3 years, you said, probably, that you couldn't get through anywhere.
Yeah.
And during that time, all the underbrush and vines and everything just grew up and made it where you
You lost a lot of that canopy that kind of kept it shaded.
That's right.
And
That's
all those
right.
plants just thrived in the sunlight
Right.
and just filled in the forest floor,
And that pine straw also keeps the
And that
stuff from germinating.
that freeze started
Yeah.
late one evening, And they was 3 nights. It sounded like a war going on.
Yeah,
Boom,
popping,
boom,
snapping.
pop, and break, and
Right.
snap, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Grandpa said
Well, I've heard that. I've
that
heard
must
the
be what the sound of war sounds like.
snap. Yeah. Wow.
For how long? A day and a half?
3 nights.
3 nights?
Said, yeah.
Wow. That would be.
I've heard it. I've heard this snapping and popping like that. Not on that scale, but when I've had ice storms.
Well, this was
you
continuous.
walk outside and you
This
hear
was
things
continuous for 3 nights
popping. Yeah.
before it was.
I think it was up in Tyler. When I was living there, we had an ice storm come through one year. We had a bad winter.
We've had it here
Yeah,
slightly before, but,
I mean, I
not,
could hear it
not
snapping
like that.
Here?
popping.
Yeah.
It's nothing like it was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I've seen it freeze over there in them little long young pines like you see down there.
Right.
Be laying on the ground
Right.
with ice.
Yeah.